Shortly before we left Alaska, a man and his wife called me, and they were in tears. They were just frantic. Their 23-year-old son had just been killed by a truck that ran through a four-way stop, and it was discovered that that truck, the brakes were bad, and the driver knew it, and he couldn't stop, and he plowed right into the side of their son, 23 years old. The man in our church, his name was Paul, and I began to minister to him. He was so angry, mad at God, mad at the truck driver, wanted the truck driver to pay, wanted to throw the book at him. Of course, the truck driver was brought up on charges for vehicular homicide, and all of my conversations with Paul seemed to go absolutely nowhere. It's almost like he shut me out and didn't want to hear anything I had to say about his need to just open up his heart to the healing grace of Jesus. Only the Lord can heal that deep wounding, and I'm not interested in that. Why did God allow this? And so we just prayed and fasted and prayed, and it seemed like we were getting nowhere with him. And then one night he had a dream, and God appeared to him miraculously and said, "Paul, you've got to let this go." And he knew it was Jesus. And Paul called me and said, "Pastor, the Lord just told me I got to let this go." And so we began that journey, and over a couple of weeks, it seemed like he just was releasing all that hurt and pain and anger to the Lord. All along during this process, of course, the court trial is going on, and on the day of sentencing, they invite Paul and his wife and the guy who's being sentenced to obviously he's there, and they invite me. "Pastor, would you come?" I said, "Oh, sure, I'll come and support you." Unbeknownst to me, at the end, a lot of times a judge will say, "Would you like to say anything?" Because the judge is about to pass sentence on the man. And Paul stands up and says this. He says, "Your Honor, the Lord has been gracious to me and has forgiven me and has told me that I need to forgive this man. And I am asking you to not send him to jail, because I have forgiven him and I don't want him to go to jail." There are rarely holy moments inside of a courtroom. You know that? The courtrooms beget strife. You know that, right? It's just awful. And in that moment, there was like this holy hush just settled into this room. The judge was speechless. He said, I'm going to have to take this back into consideration. The judge came back 20, 30 minutes later and said, "Paul, based on your testimony, this took months to get to this date, right?" He said, "I will just give him time served with a fine." And Paul walks over and hugs that man for 5 or 10 minutes. And they're both in tears. And we're all in tears, right? As Paul is offering the forgiveness that he has received is flowing out from him. 3 weeks later, that truck driver shows up at church and gives his heart to Jesus. Friends, that's the gospel. Freely you have received, freely you give. And I believe that as Paul released that man, he was holding so tight to him in unforgiveness. As he released that man, he released him literally into the hands of Jesus when he took his hands off of him, and the Spirit of God drew him right to himself. I often wonder, friends, when we hang on to our junk, how much of that keeps the Lord and His Spirit from operating in the very life of the one who desperately needs the conviction and convincing of the Holy Spirit. You have received the water of God's life. Our call now is to let it flow out of these temples to a chaotic world who desperately needs Jesus.